Welcome into another edition of the Sherwood Ford Giant Offseason Questions here at Oilers Nation, brought to you by our friends at Sherwood Ford the Giant. Today's question is simple. What can we expect from the Oilers tomorrow when the free agent window opens? And really, there is one move that sounds like it could be done pretty quickly after the window opens at 10 a.m. Mountain, and that's the Oilers potentially agreeing to terms with goaltender Jack Campbell. The rumored contract is 5 years times $5 million. And it's an interesting one. I mean, Campbell's coming off a couple of, pretty impressive seasons with the Toronto Maple Leafs back in 2020, 2021. He played in 22 games for the Maple Leafs and had a .215 goals against average and a .921 save percentage. This past season, his goals against average was 2.64. His save percentage was .914. Really solid numbers, but he doesn't exactly have a long track record of being a legit number one goalie. He's 30 years old, but he's only played in 135 career NHL games, and this past season was the first time he ever played north of 32 games in a year when he played 49 for the Maple Leafs. So there's definitely some risk here for Ken Holland and the Oilers, but there weren't really a lot of other options. It sounds like Darcy Kuemper has his heart set on becoming a Washington Capital. The Maple Leafs went out and acquired Matt Murray from the Ottawa Senators, and the free agent market after Kuemper and Campbell, it's not exactly that deep, so it really feels like the Oilers have found their guy in Campbell, and while the contract, maybe is a year too long and $1 million too much, I would argue the Oilers really don't have much of a choice but to give in to what Campbell's ask is and pay up a little bit to make sure they have a number one goalie to play with Stuart Skinner next season. Outside of the goaltending situation, I would expect that tomorrow the Oilers are going to be very active on the forward market. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about whether or not they'll be able to bring back Evander Kane. There's been some reports that the Oilers have been willing to, be creative with Kane and trying to work out a contract that could also line up with his grievance case against the NHL and the San Jose Sharks. There have been reports of 4 or 5 year offers somewhere in the range of $4.5 to $5 million from the Oilers, and Kane's camp said they're not interested. They think they can get around $48 to $50 million on a long-term deal. Well, the Oilers, in a way, are calling Kane's bluff. They're saying, go ahead, talk to other teams and see if you can get that, and then maybe you'll circle back to us. The Kane thing is definitely up in the air. Some other names that the Oilers could be interested in, though, include Claude Giroux, although that's seemingly becoming less and less realistic by the day, as there's a lot of chatter that he could want to go back to his hometown of Ottawa. Another name to keep an eye on is Mason Marchment, the former Florida Panther, and he had a pretty impressive season last year, racking up 47 points in 54 games. He scored 18 goals, but again, almost in a way similar to Jack Campbell, he only has 90 career games, and he's already 27 years old. But he is a big body, coming in at 6'4" and 210 pounds, and he would fit in pretty well in the Oilers' top 9. A report from Frank Saravalli says that he could be looking for a contract similar to what Carter Verhaeghe got with the Florida Panthers, which carried an AAV of $4.1 million. There's also been some talk that the Oilers could be interested in reuniting with David Perron, who's coming off an exceptional season with the St. Louis Blues, where he scored 27 goals in 67 games. Of course, Perron was an Oiler for about a year and a half from 2013 to 2015, and he scored 33 goals in just over 100 games with the Edmonton Oilers. His AAV would be a little bit higher than someone like Mason Marchment's, but Perron would be a great fit in the Oilers' top 6. If you're looking at a potential trade option for the Oilers, there is some smoke behind the name Connor Brown. He's been linked to Edmonton a few times now. He's a former junior teammate of Connor McDavid. He's a player who can contribute on your power play, at 5-on-5, and on the penalty kill as well. So Connor Brown is a trade target to keep an eye on. And lastly, we're fully expecting Ken Holland to bring in 2, maybe even 3 defensemen tomorrow. Frank Saravalli is reporting that Brett Kulak is going to walk to unrestricted free agency and at least test the market. That doesn't necessarily mean the Stony Plain native won't make his way back to the Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton has apparently offered him both a short-term and a long-term deal in the recent weeks, but Kulak wants to test the market. If they lose him, they've already lost Duncan Keith. They're going to need a couple of left shot D-men. And hey, there's also a chance they move Tyson Barrie. Frank Saravalli has him at number 6 on his trade targets list. If they move on from Barrie, then they're also going to need a right shot D-man to slide into the third pairing as well. Colin Miller out in Buffalo might be an interesting name to keep an eye on there. On the left side, there have been some reports that the Oilers could be interested in soon-to-be former Flames defenseman Nikita Zadorov as well, who would give them some size and toughness on the back end. They need a goalie. Sounds like they found their guy. They need a forward or two, and that's up in the air. And what they do on the blue line, well, that appears to be anyone's guess as we head towards the beginning of unrestricted free agency tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. What do you want to see the Oilers do? Let me know in the comments below, and that's going to be a wrap on another edition of the Sherwood Ford Giant Offseason Questions.